What's good? It's your man SP, better known as King Cool on 93.1 WZAK. And today I'm here with my good friend Jacob Van Sickle, and we want to know what's your move. We want to find out what's your health, your way. Jacob, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Sam. Thanks for having me here today.
Good, good. Let's start off with this. How do you work out? What's your physical activity?
Yeah, my physical activity really revolves around the bike and hiking. Anything that really kind of gets me out of the house and out into the community exploring. Some may think of some of those things as just, leisure activities. But for me, a lot of times they're for recreation, but they're also a lot of times for transportation and how I get around.
Absolutely. That's why we're friends, because I'm on the bike too.
Right.
We do a lot of work together when it comes to that. And, biking is amazing, but, we don't want to be too biased here when we're talking about physical activity. However, I'll just tell you when it comes to the bike for me, when I was younger, me and my father used to ride bikes a lot, and I used to be a big runner. However, I blew out my knee, so I had to get a way to stay healthy, and I pulled out my father's bike. My father has a old Miata bike that was built in the 80s. Pulled that out, cleaned it up, and I never looked back, and here we are, and that's why we're good friends today, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sam, thinking about the past, let's go a little bit to your past. I know at a young age 29, you had a health scare. Can you share a little bit about your story there and how folks can kind of learn from that?
Yeah, so speaking of my father, I saw my father deal with a lot of health struggles when I was younger. In 8th grade, I found out that I had high cholesterol. So from there, I knew I should take my health seriously, but I didn't. But when my father passed away, it stuck with me, and it always stayed in the back of my mind. So I worked out here and there, didn't take it as serious as I needed to because it didn't align with my health until I got to 29. I was at Edgewater Park. I was out for a run with a running group, and I suffered from a heart attack. So wasn't typical symptoms. I couldn't catch my breath, but at the time I didn't know what was happening to me. Only until I got to the hospital, I found out that I had a 95% blockage in my right coronary artery, and my cholesterol level was 475.
At age 29?
At age 29. But here's the thing. The doctors, first they said, we don't know how you're alive. But then they said, if you were a runner, then you wouldn't be here with us, because my heart got used to forcing blood through that blockage. So physical activity actually saved my life. And it was one point where I got injured. I blew out my knee, as I mentioned, and I still needed to stay physically active. So when I was out running was great, but it wasn't friendly for my joints anymore, especially since I had knee issues at that point. So biking just seemed like the perfect solution for me. It was a great way to see the city, get the wind in your face. The biking groups here in Cleveland are amazing. So I got a chance to make a lot of new friends. And like I said, I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, you're not alone in there, 1 in 4 people in Cuyahoga County don't meet the physical activity requirements that help build a healthy lifestyle. That's really resulted in 3 in 4 adults suffer from obesity or heart disease, and it's these small things that we can add to our daily lives, that get us movement and get our heart rate up, that can really help improve our health outcomes, so we don't have to go through things like you experienced at age 29.
Absolutely, and that's why I preach the Heart Strong message, and that came from my own heart attack. When I sat there in the hospital and I just thought about a lot of things, and one of those things was how physical activity saved my life. And it was just a little thing I did, right? So I went out with this running group being social, and that turned into a lifestyle for me. And after that, I just thought, man, if people start to do one thing, it could really save their lives. And that includes parking a little farther away when you go to the grocery store, maybe adjusting the items that you get when you go out to maybe a fast food restaurant or a restaurant or something like that. Just be more mindful of what you're getting. And most importantly, movement. That is the number one thing that you need to do to survive. And that could be dancing. If you like to dance, walking is one of the most underrated things you can do. I think a lot of people think they need to pour down with sweat and just be huffing and puffing when they work out. No, you could just walk 30-minute brisk walk where you can still have a conversation, can do wonders for you. And of course, we talked about biking, running is there as well, intramural sports, as far as if you want to play pickup basketball or flag football. If you still got it like that, after I blew out my knee, I couldn't do those things. But if you are able to still do those things, they can really save your life.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that we do a lot at Bike Cleveland, with support from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health and the Center for Disease Control through the REACH program, is to help advocate for safe places for people to bike and walk. And I think that's a key part of increasing physical activity in people's lives is, you know, being able to walk outside your door and having access to, you know, safe sidewalks to be able to actually take a walk, or, you know, being able to pull your bike out of the garage and be able to have a trail to get to, or a protected bike lane to be able to bike on, to make your ability to be physically active easier.
And we're talking a lot about biking right now. So for the audience, I do have a question for you. Can you just pick up a bike and go? Are there certain things that you need to know? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I mean, you certainly can pick up a bike and go. You might not have a great experience. There's a few things you should do, especially if you haven't been on a bike in a little while. So we always tell people to do an ABC quick check before they take their bike out on a bike ride, and that includes, you know, A for air, checking the tire pressure on your tires to make sure you have enough air, because if you don't, it's going to be a rougher ride and you're more likely to get a flat tire. Checking your brakes to make sure that your brake levers are secure, to make sure your brake pads aren't rubbing on your tire, so again, you don't get a flat tire, and make sure you have enough power to actually stop your bike when you're riding. And then, you know, checking the C is checking your chain, your cranks, your cogs, you know, looking over your bike to make sure nothing's loose or out of place. And then lastly, you know, do a quick check of your bike, a quick look over, look at the quick releases if you have any on your seat or your front or back tires to make sure they're closed. And then do a quick stroll around, you know, the driveway or around your street before you go any longer distance to make sure your bike is ready to go. And, you know, if you handle all those things, in addition to making sure you have your helmet on, you're ready to go out and go on a bike ride, you know, solo or with some friends.
Got to protect that noggin.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned friends. So there are a lot of biking communities out there. Can you tell us about that and how one person can join a biking community?
Yeah, so, you know, I always tell people I'm a little biased, but, you know, to start with Bike Cleveland, visit bikecleveland.org. We have a lot of resources on there about, you know, getting back out on a bike, but also how to connect with groups that are organizing bike rides. We ourselves organize a number of organized rides throughout the year, but there's this really great group called Slow Roll Cleveland that rides every Monday night. Just about in the summer, and they're drawing anywhere from 400 to 600 to 800 people for these rides. You know, riding through Cleveland neighborhoods, a really accessible ride, open to all ages and abilities. These are really some of the most fun, diverse rides I ever go on, and it's a great place to meet people, build social connections. And I'll tell you what, Sam, I've met a lot of people who have started riding rides like Slow Roll in large groups. And that's kind of transitioned them into doing more solo rides. And, you know, that's just more opportunities for people to be physically active.
Yeah, even when it comes to myself during 2020, during the pandemic, as I mentioned, I pulled out my father's bike, but I was riding by myself a lot. But I discovered Slow Roll. So, and again, haven't looked back. I'm actually a part of Squad now. So I love to be out there every Monday. And it's been truly a great community where you meet so many people. You see so many different sides of Cleveland. As you said, you go at a great pace and you just have a lot of fun out there. Yeah. So with Slow Roll being one group, Bike Your Neighborhood is another group as well. You want to tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, Bike Your Neighborhood is a group organized, focused around the Buckeye, Mount Pleasant, Shaker neighborhoods. And they ride the second Saturday of every month from behind the Dave's Market in Shaker Square. They've been drawing anywhere from 50 to 150, 200 people. And those rides really focus on showcasing the neighborhood, but it's bringing people of all ages and abilities out to explore the neighborhoods on a bike and experience Cleveland in ways people haven't done before. And it's a great opportunity, you know, to experience other neighborhoods.
So there are biking groups like a Major Taylor and others out there. I see them on Facebook groups all of the time. What's the difference between a Slow Roll and an actual biking group?
Yeah, you know, it really varies. There are a lot of different bike clubs out there. You know, you mentioned Major Taylor. There's Lake Erie Wheelers. There's Cleveland Touring Club. Down south, there's Akron Bike Club. You know, every group ride has their own cadence and how they do them. You know, a lot of them have very beginner-friendly rides, more social, all the way up to kind of your A-level ride where you're going a lot faster than you know, most people would. You know, you're riding 15, 20 miles an hour. So it's really about, you know, finding the right fit for you. I always tell people, if you're getting back out on a bike, slow roll is a great ride. Any ride that we do at Bike Cleveland are age friendly and accessible for people of all ages and abilities. And as you get more experience and you want to ride faster, look for some of those other bike clubs like Cleveland Touring Club or Lake Erie Wheeler that have kind of the more speedy riders.
Yeah, listen, yeah, I've been out there and trying to keep up with them, but again, the community is just so great. No matter what, if you keep up or if you can't, they're very welcoming. Now, I do have a question. I'm out here on this bike 4 days a week, and I feel like I'm not seeing any results. Do I give up, or what time should I really expect to see results on a bike as a main method of physical activity?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take time. You're going to build up to really have that healthy lifestyle over time. It's not going to be a week or two. I'll tell you, the first time I got back out on a bike and I rode my first 5 miles, my butt was sore. I was so tired. I was so proud of myself. And that was the beginning of a summer. By midsummer, I was going out with friends and riding 20, 30 miles and able to do it. Just from that consistent riding. We always tell people you want to try to get 30 to 60 minutes of physical activity in a day to really be really hard strong and be really healthy. And if you do that, you're going to work yourself up and you're going to start surprising yourself like I did. I was surprised I did 5 miles and then I worked my way up and was doing 50 miles on weekends with friends.
Yeah, that's so true, man. I remember when I first started riding like you, I was like, 5 miles, yes, 10 miles, yes. But now it's like I can't go less than 10. But, again, that's just when you're in the community and you just get used to being on the bike. And it matters what type of bike that you have as well. So if somebody is looking for a bike right now, do you want to talk about a place that they can start or the different type of bikes that they can look at?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of bikes. I always encourage folks to visit their local bike shop and talk with the bike shop employees to see what might be best for the uses you're going to do. But anytime you're looking at a hybrid bike or a commuter bike, those are a lot for some of these social rides. But you also see people out there on folding bikes and on electric bikes. It's really think about how you plan to use your bike. If you're using it for commuting, you might want to be looking more like an e-bike or some more of a commuter bike where you can attach your bags to. But if you're just using it for recreation, you might want something a little bit more lighter and a little bit more faster. So I encourage folks to always talk with their local bike shop and, let them know how you plan to use your bike. And, with some good luck, you're going to use that bike and you're going to use it a lot. And they're going to say, I might want to go, do some mountain biking or I want to upgrade to an e-bike. And, eventually you're going to keep adding more bikes because it can be a little bit addicting, but it's good for your health. It's good for the community and, something we all should be doing.
So if somebody's watching this right now is like, this sounds great, but I don't have a bike, but they have the environment. And you mentioned earlier that you like to hike. I mentioned earlier that I was a runner. Where are some places that people can enjoy some of the things that Bike Cleveland has advocated for, as far as like hiking, trails, safe trails they can take for walking, running, and different things of that nature? How can we speak to those people where biking might not be their main source of working out, but they are a runner? How can people get into those things?
Yeah, I mean, Cuyahoga County and Cleveland are filled with plenty of great places to be out and physically active. We have our Emerald Necklace and the Metro Parks trails that really, connect communities around the borders. We have the Lakefront Bikeway in Cleveland, a great place to bike and walk and hike. I often tell people, looking into the Towpath Trail, certainly, you can ride that 110 miles south of New Philadelphia. But there are a lot of great connections off of that into the neighborhoods as well, whether that's the Treadway Creek Trail or the Morgana Run Trail in Slavic Village. So looking out there, there's plenty of places in Cuyahoga County and Cleveland to be physically active, whether you're biking, whether you're walking. And I encourage people, visit bikecleveland.org. We have a lot of resources on there, including, maps and places to ride and those types of things.
If somebody doesn't want to do this alone, how can they recruit different people from maybe certain areas of their lives, maybe churches, extracurricular activities, etc.?
Yeah, one great area to get plugged into, especially with Bike Cleveland, is through our Better Street committees. If you live in a Cleveland neighborhood, we likely have a group that meets on a monthly basis that's planning whether they're activities, bike rides or walks in the neighborhood, or also developing campaigns to advocate for improving the environment for people to walk and bike in the neighborhood. So I encourage you to visit bikecleveland.org and learn about our Better Street committees and get plugged in, because it's a great way to get connected with the community. One, to be more physically active, whether they're organizing rides, or to get plugged into the community to help more people be more physically active by advocating for safer environments for people to do that.
And I'm curious to know what you think about this as far as people who feel like they don't need to work out because they don't look overweight or whatever. And one thing I'll say to that is, having a heart attack at 29, I look how I look now. I was in shape. I was out for a run. But one thing I didn't realize is our bodies are a lot like cars. If we don't hear anything knocking or see a check engine sign on, we just keep going. But we do need to have our regular tune-ups, check-ins, oil changes to make sure that everything is moving and going. So it's the same thing as far as going to a doctor. You might need to go to the doctor to make sure everything is up and going. But you have that person who just says, I look good. I don't need to work out. What do you say to that person?
Yeah, I'd say, we're all made of flesh and blood, right? There are all things we need to do to stay healthy. And whether, for us, it's biking and walking and running. For somebody else, it might be something else. But no matter how you look, it's always important to pay attention to the signs in your body. It's always important to make sure you're getting that, 30, 60 minutes of physical activity that your body really requires every day. For us, we want to create as many opportunities for people to do that, whether that's riding a bike, whether that's being able to walk safely, and creating connections for people. Bike Cleveland is a membership-based organization, but we partner with groups. I mentioned Slow Roll, Major Taylor Cycling, the local bike clubs. There's opportunities out there for everybody to get physically active, and we're happy to help kind of provide and promote those opportunities.
And it's fun. Moving is fun. I mean, it takes me back to when I grew up in Warrensville. We were always outside, running around, doing anything we could, but we were outside just enjoying the fresh air and just strengthening our bones and working through social problems, just being in front of people, creating that environment and that community. So if you have somebody who might have just moved to town or they want to get back into working out, what resources would you point them to start their journey?
Yeah, so in all realm, I'd point folks to bikecleveland.org. Like I mentioned, we have a number of resources on there, whether you're trying to find good places to bike, whether you're trying to get connected to a new group of friends to ride bikes with. Lots of resources on there. I would also encourage folks, visit the Cleveland Metro Parks website if you're looking for more places to be physically active. Host of activities in all of the Cleveland Metro Parks. And I would also encourage, get connected with your local Better Street committee. It's a really hyper-local group, a great way to meet neighbors, especially neighbors that really care about this type of work of getting people out physically active and building the environments to make them, to allow them to be able to do that.
Okay. Jacob, this has been great. Do you have any parting words for our audience?
Yeah, I think, I mentioned a lot of groups that we work with in the city of Cleveland to help people be more physically active. In addition, through our Better Street committees and our advocacy work, helping to improve the environments to make it easier and safer and encourage more people to get out and physically active. I would encourage folks to visit bikecleveland.org. I'd encourage them to visit HIP Cuyahoga and really find your way to get that 30 to 60 minutes of physical activity in. If I never see you at a Bike Cleveland event, that's fine, as long as you're able to find your space to do that physical activity. But for folks that are interested and intrigued, I encourage you to visit our website. Join us at an upcoming bike ride or an event. Attend a slow roll. There's plenty of ways to get plugged into this local cycling community and help advance our efforts to make it easier and safer for everybody to bike and walk.
Absolutely. And I encourage you to move. It is so important. And it's one thing that saved my life. And that's why I dedicated my life to being heart strong. And that starts with movement. So make sure you do that. Check out the resources that Jacob talked about. Protect your heart and everything in it. And make sure you get outside and enjoy the beautiful weather while you can. Hope to see you out at Slow Roll or any other biking event. We're always here for you when you want to improve your health. Until next time, my friends,